to continue eating. Drinking. So I am a middle school teacher, and I say that by way of introduction. I don't stay still very long. If you're a teacher, you probably get that. But especially as a middle school teacher, it's hard for me to stand here for more than a couple of minutes. So I may roam around, which means I might be on mic and off mic constantly. For those who don't know me, my name is Corinna Crafton. I am a teacher of English, I'm a grade level dean, and I'm a doctoral student studying transformational educational leadership at the University of New England. And I'm here to talk about a very small topic, and that is the future of education. Not at all small, huge, massive. I'll do my best in about 45 minutes to sort of encapsulate some emerging ideas and themes I think may have growing significance as we move further into the 21st century. So first I've got a question for you. Raise a hand if you recall at any time during your years in school, it's already time to move, using one of these. Yeah. Me too. How about using one of these? We have one. We have one. Maybe less familiar from our days in school than pen and paper, but indeed there was a time where skill with and knowledge about a weapon, a tool, a sword, an axe was just as important as that pencil and paper were to our school days. So there are very few certainties about education. One thing is for certain, it will change. It will change quickly. In fact, it's changing more quickly now than at any time in the past. It's a little bit tough to keep up with all of those changes. So to consider the future of education, I thought we might start by looking at the past. And this PowerPoint technology, by the way, is something of a relic of the past already. It's a bit outdated, PowerPoint. But we'll talk more about what has taken its place soon.
So let's say I never lived on it. Now I don't have to.
See, now you don't have to. And it was here in a blinking moment, so no worries. So at one time, in the not-too-distant past, education was the right and the privilege of the wealthy. The very small, the 1%, if you will, were educated. And there were two forces that brought about great change: the intellectual movement of the Enlightenment and the mechanization of the Industrial Revolution. And those two forces brought about compulsory education paid for through taxation, centralized in the form of schoolhouses and eventually boards of education and district offices. That model of education, which we all have come through, prizes several forms of knowledge and skill: deductive reasoning and the classics, Greek, Latin, rhetoric. And that model has served some people very, very well, and it's left lots of other people behind. We have all experienced that model. Some of us have had great success from it, and some of our other aspects, some of our potential talents were not really ever tapped into. They were not valued, they were not measurable in the classic sense. And so here we are today with a model of education that prizes testing and measuring, quantitative data, and we have lots of it. If you are a teacher, you know this painfully to be the case. Testing, and let's try some testing. It provides that quantitative measure of what students have learned, or does it? It provides a measure of some things students have learned, and some things we may value. Other aspects are left behind. Those qualitative, experiential aspects of knowledge and skill are not measurable. Yet the pressures are on us from stakeholders to demonstrate student outcomes. And how best to do that? Spreadsheets, charts, graphs, test scores. We can get an idea of an individual, a school, and a grade, and a district by looking at test scores. But can we really get a picture of any individual by that individual's score on the NJ Ask this year? Or the SAT, or the SAT2, or the ACT, or the GRE, or the MCAT? Well, we can get some information from that, and certainly it's valuable. But something is left behind. And those things that are left behind are becoming all more relevant in the lives of our students. So the emerging paradigm shift, where are we going? Wish I had the answer to that question. I might be a multi-millionaire. There are many factors forcing us into change. And we could probably list them in 50 or 60 slides. Rather than do that, I'm encapsulating them into three broad areas: globalization, technology, and what I call RPMs, or revolutions per minute, and that is the pace of change. The pace of change is faster, as I mentioned, than it's ever been before, and only increasing in speed. Global forces, and there are many, but I've listed them in terms of importance, I think, for this discussion. Digital migrants and digital natives. We're all digital migrants. Unless you're in 5th grade over there, I see her, you're a digital native. You are. Congratulations. We can learn from you. Digital natives do not know of a world without the internet. They do not know of a world without instant communication. We remember that world. Many of us are still there, or missing it, maybe. But they don't know a world without ubiquitous technology, and that's really crucial for us, for educators, to recognize and accept. We can bemoan the loss of the card catalog, but we can't bring it back. No one's going to use it. We have to move forward. Beyond our individual status as digital native or digital migrant, there are forces in this world which we can no longer ignore. Not that we've necessarily been ignoring them, but we need to embrace them and form understandings and problem-solving skills in order to meet them. Pandemics brought on by scarcity, brought on by the increasing rate of travel between countries, increasing and different immigration patterns, the imbalance of abundance and redistribution, the emergence of Asia and Africa as legitimate, real, large forces in this world, finally recognized by others. Climate change, I think the debate's over. I won't ask for a show of hands because we don't want to start that debate. But it is an issue I think people are willing to come to some agreement on at this point. And social media, the idea of refusing to acknowledge its presence and not allow students to use it in the classroom and in support of the classroom is a problem. We cannot force students to walk away from social media. We need to learn how to use it in furtherance of our mission. Connected learning, I'll be talking a lot about surface and deep learning and the impact that local, regional, micro, and macroeconomics plays on the future of education. There's a lot of fear out there, but also some glimmers for hope, and I hope to show you many of them this morning. So, globalization. Another word for that in education circles is collaboration. There's a growing movement within education to move beyond the four walls in any school and broaden learning to include students from many places and experiences and beyond peer groups. We have students who work with people in other generations and across vast physical distances to produce, to make products. I'll be sharing with you a movie a student made, a multi-generational movie. There needs to be great relevancy to students in terms of what we ask of them. When I was in school and given tasks to do, I did it because that's what was assigned. So my grammar workbook, page 84, do this for homework. Why did I do it? Because my teacher said to do page 84. What's the relevance? I didn't even think about that. I just did the homework. Today's students need relevance. They need to know why. And they tune out if there is no why. If you're a teacher, you know this to be true. There needs to be relevance. And the way to get to relevance is through collaboration and something called cultural pluralism. Cultural pluralism is not cultural literacy. And I know that just sounds sort of like a semantics and I'm getting hung up on language, but I'm not. Cultural literacy is a vestige from the 20th century. It was learning about other cultures. And by phrasing it simply in that way, we are positing someone, some group as other, and placing power in the hands of another group. That's been problematic. I think we've seen that in the world. Cultural pluralism is not simply accepting and celebrating our differences because they're great, but recognizing we don't have distinct cultures anymore. And to hold on to the idea that, yeah, we really do. I have this distinct culture. I'm on this island in the far north. That's great, but you really don't have this distinct culture anymore. We have an ever-blending, ever-evolving set of cultures. It's a wonderful thing, but it's new and it's a little scary. A little scary to a lot of people, in fact. So cultural pluralism forces us to confront some of the insidious, subtle ideas and ideologies we may have been holding and not even realize we're holding them. And this goes for our students as well. So teachers today and teachers of tomorrow need to confront their own cultural beliefs and ideas about cultural pluralism. Some examples that I've encountered fairly recently in my own work with students have to do with students bringing to school their ideas of what Americans are. I have many students who come from elsewhere, other parts of the world, or their parents come from other parts of the world. One thing they're often surprised by is the lack of multilinguality in our schools. Students in our schools here speak one language, pretty much, and that's English. They're not fluent in 2 or 3 languages. That's strange. Travel elsewhere, and you have students who speak many languages and at a young age. So they're a bit surprised by that. Many are also surprised by the limited knowledge some students have of their own American history, their own American culture, if you will, when it's ubiquitous in other parts of the world. I give my students in 8th grade an English history test, an 8th grade history test that was given in 1912, the 1912 history exam to move on to 9th grade. And they're always astounded by how tough the questions are. Wow, they have to take this in 8th grade. But what the second thing they recognize is that that history test is very Anglo-centric. It does not recognize cultures of the world. It reflected the dominant ideology of the time and what was considered important. Not that those items aren't important, we still should know where the Mississippi River is. And the state capitals, helpful to know. But I do have a little video that I'd love to share with you. Aaron Whitaker is a composer from the University of Las Vegas in Nevada, so I have a special affinity for his work. And he composed a beautiful piece in 2010 and was looking for a large choir to record his work. And he had some trouble locally finding enough people to complete his project. And so he turned to the largest recruitment tool he could find, and that was the internet and the globe. And he was able to create this work. It went viral a couple years ago, so if you've seen it, you're about to see it again. of cultural pluralism and collaboration across all demographics. When we have people of many generations and experiences and backgrounds, people from Israel and Palestine, India and Pakistan, working together, not for the sake of some assignment, working together to create, to produce something new, something they value, something they love. Those are the moments of magic and the moments where we really do see our shrinking world. I think he did a wonderful job. They're all available on YouTube. He's done 3 or 4 of them since, to growing and growing in size. I think his latest work is over 400 voices. So globalization, one of our emerging threads. Technology. Pejorative? Yeah. Laudatory term? I don't know. Somewhere in between? There are a lot of feelings about technology. There are also a lot of definitions of what it is. Technology has always been with us. This was emerging technology at some point. This is plastic, but the real thing, right, was emerging technology at some point. So just coming to a common definition is a bit of a challenge. Once we get to the common definition, the difficulties don't stop there. For educators, and this will become more and more important, the deliberateness with which we approach and use technology in educating students cannot be understressed. Too much randomness has been at play in classrooms. If you're a teacher, you know this to be true. Perhaps you've been given a technology initiative. It's been put in your classroom. And that's it. Not much training at all. It is a language, and moving forward, students need to be fluent in this language of technology. It's a tool when it's used properly. It can be a distraction when it's not. You know this if you have ever succumbed to the lure of Crazy Birds, Candy Crush, Solitaire, Ammo. Yeah. It also is one of the forces spurring this rapid change I spoke about. Skills and knowledge, however, are still primary, and I think a lot of teachers you talk to bemoan the loss of skills and knowledge, thinking that technology is sort of taking that away, and it can if it's not used carefully, and we'll look at a couple examples. It's not a panacea for all that is wrong with education. Technology doesn't fix poverty. Technology doesn't fix parenting issues. Technology doesn't fix neglect and abuse. Technology doesn't fix overcrowded classrooms. Technology doesn't fix the kid who hasn't eaten all weekend and is really looking forward to Monday just to get that free breakfast. So it is a tool, not a panacea. We'll be looking at a couple examples. LMS, which is a learning management system, screencasting and asynchronous meetings, coding, computer coding. Raise your hand if you know any coding language, or even just a little bit. Yeah, no surprise that at least some are teachers. Yeah. Coding is the background. It's what's behind this computer and making the darn thing work so that we can see this PowerPoint. There are many in educational circles who are pushing for coding to be a requirement to graduate from high school. And behind that is the idea that we would like students to know what runs this software, what's behind all of it. How does Google do a search through 55,000 documents in a fraction of a second? So there's some logic to that. It sounds pretty reasonable. It might become as ubiquitous as the arithmetic and the multiplication tables we had to master in school, this idea of basic coding. Screencasting has sort of taken the place of something like PowerPoint. It is sharing with students, sharing with anyone, information, and that person can watch over and over and over again. Raise your hand if you've heard of Khan Academy, K-H-A-N, Khan Academy. That's a screencasting, free service. I'm struggling with inequalities. I can go to Khan Academy, search for inequalities, and watch a video explaining how to solve an inequality. And I can watch it 25 times if I need to, and I would need to. Synchronous and asynchronous meeting. If you've ever taken an online course, you've been part of this, at least one half of it, asynchronous meeting. I'll look at an example of that with you as well. So I'm going to jump out of my PowerPoint for a moment and share with you a few things I do, not because I do them, but because many other teachers are doing them too. So if you're a teacher, some of this will look very much much like you're at work, and I'm sorry. I know it's Sunday, but here you are. This is called Haiku. This is my learning management system. And you'll see along the left, I have all my courses, the courses I teach, the programs I'm involved in. There are many other programs like this, from elementary school up to graduate school levels. More and more professors, teachers, and students are working beyond classroom time together. And so we'll pop into my 8th grade class. They've been doing some interesting work. Last week, Dr. Maya Angelou passed away. I think we all know that, and we're saddened to hear that news. I preempted my review for a final exam that day and had my students watch instead for homework the evening before on Haiku. They could access this from home. They watched a short video of Dr. Angelou, about 3 minutes long, discussing a key phrase of hers, and the phrase is, love liberates. And she discussed the idea of love holding as being ego, and love liberating as being the true essence of love. And I really wanted my students to dig in and think about that, because that's a deep idea for anyone. And so I had my 8th graders think about that, and I could certainly have assigned an essay, and we do plenty of essay writing, but I decided to do something a little bit different. I had them make a wiki project, which is an online space to include visual, written ideas, thoughts, responses, and set them up in the fashion that you would like. So this is one of my students' pages. This is Shreyas. And Shreyas responded by introducing his wiki page and his thoughts on love liberates with an illustration he made using an app on his iPad. And you've got the picture there of a heart and chains shattering. The idea of a very large heart there freeing someone from something. And he creates a few other interesting images for us, a wordle and some other pictures. But notice he has writing in there as well. For him, for Shreyas, the liberatory power of love is focused on recognition and acceptance. And he writes, I think one essential quality of love is that it is unconditional. If you truly love someone, you do so accepting him or her for who he or she is. It is equally important that he or she knows it. This gives him or her a sense of comfort and assurance that he or she, can you tell we've been talking about pronouns a lot? Okay. Is being loved because of and good comma use in some cases, in spite of who he or she is. It is liberating for the recipient of love because he or she will have reason to feel good about himself or herself and encouraged to stand up for himself or herself. And he referenced a Hindi film that he saw recently. The translation is like Stars on Earth. And he writes a little introduction for me, for the audience to this wiki, who may not have seen the movie. In this movie, a dyslexic kid named Ishan is ridiculed for his failures in school and his everyday life by classmates, teachers, and even his parents sometimes, mostly his dad. He is also compared to his brother, who is a straight-A student and a remarkable athlete. No one understands Ishan's situation. Troubled by his antics, his father sends him to boarding school where he believes he will learn discipline. There, Ishan bonds with the new art teacher, Ram, who recognizes Ishan's challenges and sees beyond them. Through love, compassion, acceptance, and encouragement, Ram helps Ishan unlock his hidden potential and show the world his true talents. I think that's a beautiful discussion and description of the liberatory power of love.
This is in 8th grade?
This is 8th grade. And he included a little slideshow of still shots from the movie, which I have not seen. And he knew that going in, that I would not have seen this movie, and took the time to explain that for me. And now I want to see the movie. Notice also, we can teach real skills on these learning management systems and many other platforms. We're working with MLA citations. So for those teachers in the room who are afraid technology is ruining writing, they still need to learn the MLA citation method and APA. So he had to cite everything, where he got every image, every quote, every picture. For those of you also who are really worried about this generation forgetting what is truly important in life, I'd like to show you one other student's Love Liberate wiki page, and that's Mia Reyes, who drew a beautiful picture of a group of blackbirds flying off with what might be tough to see. It's a chain. So they have taken the chain off of someone or something or someplace, and they're flying away with that broken chain. And to capture that moment, this song. Recognize it?
Take these broken wings and learn to fly.
So as long as someone knows the Beatles, there's hope. So my job's done. Something else that I'd just like to share with you briefly is the intersection of disciplines. The idea of segmented study. English is over here, history is down the hall, math and science are in their own hallway because they don't get along with humanities. That's fading and has been for many years. But certainly the pace is escalating with which it's fading. So this year my 8th graders studied the Holocaust and read with me Elie Wiesel's memoir, Night. And I post online discussion threads. And so we had so many snow days this winter. It was really rough. And my students were so thrilled to know that they could still do their schoolwork on a snow day. Learning management systems don't have snow days. And so students by 10 a.m. had to log on and find their message from Ms. Crafton. And we had been talking about the phrase Arbeit macht frei, the Friday or Thursday before the snow day. And I asked them to really think about that phrase and what it meant to Elie Wiesel, what it can mean in a larger context even today. So Samu wrote, I think that this means that if you can work, you will live. During the War of Freedom, which is another term for work, there was a reason behind this. As long as one could work, they would not be killed. This was as if you were saying that if you are weak or not a laborer, you will be killed. But if you can work, you'll live. So that's an insight. What's really great about these discussion threads, however, is that we can build on each other's understanding and add nuance and subtlety and open some other doors that may not have been apparent. So in response to Samu, Brittany wrote, but could free just be meant as a metaphor? For example, if they were sent to the crematorium and they died, now they were free from the torture. So they build on understanding by unpacking through discussion. This is asynchronous in that they did not have to do the discussion in real time. I sometimes make it so it's a synchronous discussion, and we're doing it they're in different study halls and they're all online talking to each other in this way. They discussed this on a discussion thread with a representative from the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum who was posting from Washington, D.C. So there are no geographical limits. And what's so interesting about kids today is they don't consider geographical limits. It doesn't even dawn on them to think about the fact that someone could be very far away. Sometimes that's not a good thing. We want them to recognize this is magic. You're able to talk with someone in Auckland today. One last thing on learning management systems to share with you. It's a short video a student made. This is from our film festival this year called The Indie. It's our inaugural year, so this is a work in progress. Lots of schools, from kindergarten all the way through graduate level, are starting to branch out and offer collaborative opportunities connecting with people who are not official members of the school community. Blurred lines, if you will. And so this is one of our entries this year. A student who has studied with us part-time here and part-time in China, and used a host family he had stayed with here for the setting for his film. And so this one's been nominated as a finalist. Talk about the universality of themes, right? Cultural pluralism. This is an issue that transcends culture, geography, language, food. Right? I think you did a fabulous job. Fabulous job. So that is learning management system in a glimpse. There are many, many other features that we could look at. There's also something called screencasting. I mentioned before the Khan Academy, the idea of looking at a lesson as many times as you like. And if you promise not to laugh, I will show you just a little bit of one of mine. I'm no pro at this. Again, I'm a digital migrant, okay? That's my excuse. So in teaching the Shakespearean sonnet to 8th graders, it's tough. The Shakespearean sonnet. It's so precise. The technical elements are so fixed. And ideally, we want to get into the meaning of the sonnet. But getting past the technical elements first helps us do that. So I created a short lesson. I'll show you a little bit of it so that students can watch this repeatedly, the technical elements of the sonnet. And then when I give them another sonnet to look at, they understand how it works. And they can tell me how it works.
Korean sonnet. Today we will explore Shakespeare's Sonnet 18 as we learn about meter, rhyme, and some other technical elements that help to make up what is often called the English sonnet. First thing to know is that the Shakespearean sonnet made up of 14 lines. It is always 14 lines.
You get the idea?
Those 14 lines.
I sound like I need a cup of coffee, I think, in that presentation. This is on YouTube, and if you were to go to YouTube and type in any topic that a student might study, you'll find a screencasting on that topic, and you can watch it over and over and over and over again, as many times as you need. Could be once for this. Okay. So, speed. This is our challenge moving forward to the future, to teach the skills and knowledge necessary for the jobs of tomorrow when these jobs don't exist yet and we don't really know what skills and knowledge will be needed. That's it. And that's a big challenge. Deliberateness and success through attending to the rapid nature of change. That's what we can do moving forward. That will involve teachers as well as administrators. That's the subject of my dissertation. I'm looking at the way teachers can affect reform in schools without leaving their classrooms to become principals. Because right now, that's the career track. If you want to reform education, you stop being a teacher and you go in an office. And that's a problem, and that needs to change. If you're interested in that discussion, I brought a ton of books all about that kind of thing. A couple last things to share with you. Key features of 21st century education, where this stuff is going. Learning will be teacher-guided but student-driven. It will be project-based. It will be cooperative. It will be structured to identify problems and work to solve them. It be on demand when students are ready to learn it. Skills and knowledge will still be primary, and relevancy will be made apparent. Multidisciplinary, structured to build critical thinking capacity. Something like we see with the MOOC movement. Are you familiar with the MOOC movement, anybody?
No.
That is the massive open online course movement. This comes to us courtesy of the New York Times. After this commercial.
With a vision turns to Goldman Sachs for financing and advice. Breakthroughs.
Every few seconds, the ticker on the Coursera website moves up as 70,000 new students a week enroll in courses like human-computer interaction, introduction to astronomy, and modern poetry, all offered by top-tier universities.
I've been teaching a class similar to this at Duke for 10 years, and I'm excited about the opportunity to offer it to many more students through this online venue.
Welcome to the brave new world of massive open online courses, known as MOOCs, a tool for democratizing higher education.
So welcome to the Artificial Intelligence class on
A
Gillias.
MOOC is usually free, creditless, and massive. MOOCs first landed in the spotlight last year when Sebastian Prun, a Stanford professor, offered a free artificial intelligence course, attracting 160,000 students in 190 nations. Although only a fraction of students who sign up actually complete the courses, millions of students are now enrolled in hundreds of online courses, including those offered by Udacity, Mr. Thrun's spin-off company, edX, a joint venture between Harvard and MIT, and Coursera, a Stanford spin-off that has attracted top universities like Princeton, Columbia, Duke, and University of Pennsylvania.
We're in the business of creating and disseminating knowledge. And in 2012, the internet is an incredibly important place to be present in the knowledge dissemination business.
One of the first MOOCs the university developed is called Healthcare Policy and the Affordable Care Act, taught by Dr. Ezekiel J. Emanuel, a former health advisor to the White House Office of Management and Budget.
There's nothing like watching yourself on video to realize how boring and stilted you can be.
So far, most MOOCs are in tech subjects like computer science and math, with straightforward content that could be graded by a computer. Providing instructor connection and feedback in courses like Dr. Emanuel's is tricky.
The student who's not in the class can't ask me a question directly in real time, and we can't go off on some path that might be very important to understanding certain subtleties or complexities of the course.
It's funny that people get really worked up about the grade. People want to feel like, they're being acknowledged for the amount of effort they're putting in.
So let's talk about access to healthcare in the United States.
Although Coursera's founders want to keep courses like Dr. Emanuel's free of charge, they acknowledge they'll have to monetize to run the company, send money to partner universities, and pay back investors who have put some $22 million in venture capital into Coursera.
I think the part of what's key here, and I think part of what Coursera has done is, it makes more sense to build your user base first, and then figure out later how to monetize it, than to worry too much at the beginning about monetization.
So we'll stop there because he touches on one of the key issues, and that's money. And I think we've seen in education, especially in the last 15 years, money is a player at the table. Stakeholders, corporations, even non-profits, even generous foundations such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who've donated an awful lot of money, but have not included teachers in much in the way of discussion about how that money will be used. More on that in coming years, I'm sure. So to wrap things up, the next 20 years and beyond. We don't know a whole lot, and we can only guess, but we can guess that the classroom as we know it will not exist. I see that already in my school at Worlow Hartridge. Our library is being converted into a global learning space. There will still be books housed in individual classrooms, but the global learning space will be a series of rooms, large and small, outfitted wirelessly for real-time in-person as well as asynchronous contacts and conference conferences with people far and wide. That is happening in many schools. The philosophies and canons of the West will be incorporated into epistemologies that are truly global in composition. Subject and domain-specific study will become the exception, not the norm. And production and performance will be indicators as important as standardized test scores. I love this quote by Sandy Spiker. The school of the future will be unpredictable, inconsistent, and designed to be wildly relevant for learners, their engagement, and their development. I'm excited about it, and I hope if you ask my students, they'll say they're excited to be students during this time. You notice I didn't bring any with me because I can't be sure of their answers, so I trust those. But thank you for your time.